Hello. Today's gym time reflections is Genesis chapters 12 through 15. So I am doing a year trip through the Bible. Ow, that hurt. And this is where we're at. It's like, this is where I'm at. Okay. So I'm not going to talk to you about everything. If you want a breakdown of whole everything, I'm just going to talk to you about the parts that I've seen that kind of stood out to me. And in truth, I've read Genesis so many times, and every time something else is pointed out. So, yeah. All right. So it starts out with God promising Abraham a legacy, essentially. And that's the first time, right? So 12 starts out with the legacy promise. And he's about 75 years old at this point, right? So the whole book of Genesis really highlights the failures of humans and the faithfulness of God. It's like the more the people in Genesis fail, the more God shows how much he loves us. He loves them in this case. Just a reminder for me that he loves me. So then when you get to 10 verse 12, you start seeing the failure. He's going to another land, the land of Egypt, because there's a famine, and he decides that he's going to go here and start with a lie. Puts his family in a precarious situation. It is just him and his wife, who is his half-sister. It was fine at the time, but what ends up happening because of the lie is that she's taken as another man, the king in this case's wife, and it causes all types of upheaval. So God just told him how faithful he is, and then Abram fails, right? And then it goes into how Egypt started having all these plagues and all these consequences for being in this kind of sinful position with Sarai as the wife. And he's like, no, I don't want this here. I really would like to know how the Pharaoh at the time knew that it was God's doing. What are you putting on us? How this was spiritual and bigger than him. That is I literally put question marks. How did he know that all these things that were happening were due to something that was wrong with this kind of relationship that he was having? So then in 13, what stood out to me is that he always comes back to talk to God. So it's 13:4. To the site where he had built the altar. He noticed that he messes up. And he comes back to God. And it's just a reminder, no matter how much I screw up, I can always come back. The Lord is looking for my repentant heart. And he shows that by building an altar. Then it goes on to more at the end of the chapter, at the lower into the chapter, verse 9. Him and Lot, who is his nephew who went with him, he's clearly where we are, it's too crowded, so take your people and you go that way and I'll go this way. But he's willing to not have the best of the best because he allows his nephew to choose where he wants to go, and he said he would just take what was left over. That's a lot of humility. I mean, he was clearly the elder in this situation. Lot chooses poorly and goes to where the fun is. Now we know too much fun can lead to trouble, right? So he goes towards the town of Sodom and Gomorrah. There's a war that breaks out between a boatload of kings, which I kind of want to research this historical. If it was a war, there should be some historical reference to it, which they name all the kings, and that kind of the rest of that chapter goes on to what's going on at this war. Because of the war, Lot ends up being kidnapped, and everything, including his possessions, which means people, get taken. And Abram's nah, you ain't having my family. He gathers I think it's 319 or something, 300 and change. Don't know the exact. It does say it in there. Warriors that he has in his household. Just the warriors in his household. No big deal. He gets them and he's like, let's go. We're going to go get my nephew back. Okay. So that's kind of what's happening right here. What I did notice about this is that Lot showed a compromising spirit by choosing to be around a group of people who he knew were living sinful. And look, there were consequences to his actions. His whole household became a possession of this worldly people group, right? And God is faithful because he gets rescued by his very faithful, at this point, uncle. Chapter 14, it talks about the rescuing of Lot, which is fantastic. You should read all those details. And then he kind of makes a negotiation with the kings that took Lot. And he's like, that king is like saying, like, I'll give you this, that, and this, and that, and all this stuff in this kind of like negotiation that they're having. How Abram has like the cojones to have like a negotiation with a king when he is just a person is beyond me. But clearly the Lord was speaking through him because he walked in there with some sort of like certainty and like power to get this happen. And he tells the king, I'm not going to take any of your possessions because then you're going to think that the reason why I have stuff is because of you. And that's not true. So like he says no to a fortune. I mean, I don't know what type of position you're in, but I am in no position to be like, no thanks, you can keep your millions, I'm fine. Like, I don't know if I could do that. I would like to think that I'd be like, well, no, the Lord will provide for me and it'll be in abundance, but your millions, nah, don't want those. You know, like, Anyway, Melchizedek, right? So this is like a fun one because like I don't know if they're theologians or Bible teachers or whatever. They talk about this being kind of like a reflection of who Jesus is. Melchizedek is a king, and this king, Melchizedek, means king of righteousness, right? So that's what his name means. And Salem means peace. So his name and kingdom are king of righteousness and peace. That sounds like Jesus, right? So it's like the Jesus like archetype. And he comes into Abram's presence to bless him. He brings in wine and bread. That's kind of like communion. That's kind of like what Jesus did, right? Like, this is my body and this is my blood, right? So like, kind of like foreshadowing what's going to happen. And then he blesses Abram. Now, at this point, a promise is made again, right? So in the beginning of 12, God promises a legacy. Then after Sarai, totally skip this part, totally messes up, and the Lord is faithful again in chapter 13, he promises again a legacy. And now in chapter 15, he promises a third time the line is going to be numerous like the stars. And Abram is choosing to believe this. So not just once, twice, he's continuing to assure Abram, I got you. I got you. I got you. Okay. Anyway, totally fun. Totally read this stuff. Let me see what this says. Hold on. Yep. Okay, yeah, no. I covered it all. I just want to point out that reading the Bible every day definitely changes my life. On the days that I don't do it, there is kind of something missing, a peace, a wholeness, there's a fog about things where nothing is enough. Nothing of what I'm consuming is enough. But on the days that I read scripture, I'm already full. I'm full of the things that I need to go forward. So the rest of the day ends up being a lot less about what I can consume to fill the void. I don't know if it's going to do that for you, but you should try it. You should try it. I mean, there's no harm in reading scripture to fill the void instead of using the world to fill the void that never actually fully does it, you know? All right, we're going to go now. It's Tuesday. See you later.